Welcome to episode 8 of Unpolished Gems. We had a little bit of our the fun tech problems that happen when you can't have it kicking off an episode, but we are now live. We're super excited to have Eric Friedman on the show today, who is the executive partner of Skadden, one of the world's largest law firms. He's been there for, I think, over 30 years, and he just had some news last week. He announced that he is transitioning out of the executive partner role in April 2024, just named his successor at the firm. So I think it's awesome timing to do one of these interviews. And Eric, I know you probably don't do a ton of podcasts, if any. So thank you for bearing through the tech issues. Thank you for coming on. And I know it's been a blast. I'm super excited to do this.
Right. Likewise, guys, really happy to be here. And I appreciate, Jesse, you reaching out. And Brian, always great to catch up. And for the record, my first podcast as a participant.
That is awesome. I feel really, really grateful.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you. I think the framing would be a little bit helpful on how we ended up here. Maybe, Dad, you want to give the little bit of frame outside of Eric's long and exciting career that I want to talk about?
And by the way, I'm super, super excited. Jesse keeps telling me not to talk with my face in the mic, so I'm going to try to learn to do that. But I'm excited because I've known Eric for close to, it's probably over 30 years. And how do I know Eric? Because I went to Cornell University with his wife, Lori. And I was good friends with Lori, who happens to be incredibly good friends with my sister-in-law. So everything's connected. But my background with Eric is unbelievably amazing guy. Always thought this guy is going places. But more importantly, just always impressed with what an awesomely nice, super individual that Eric is, totally outside of profession. And yes, I'm super impressed with what he ended up doing with his career. So excited to talk to Eric about everything.
Great. Happy to be here and happy to share anything. So over to you guys. Let me know where you want to start.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think what would be interesting from a starting board is you've been at Skadden for over 30 years. You climbed the ring. You went all the way up. You lead an organization of over 1,700 attorneys, over 3,000 people. And now you literally last week announced your successor is going to come in April. Broadly, can you run through why law? What got you interested in the first place? Take us back 30 years on joining Skadden. And then, because I'm sure you talk a lot about what it's like now, what was the beginning process? How did you pick law? Was this your dream? Where do you want to go with it?
Maybe in hindsight, definitely my dream job and dream firm. It started from a more basic perspective. My maternal grandmother worked in a factory, and her immigrant mentality was you have to have a profession. And so it didn't really matter in her way of thinking what that was, but I needed to have a profession. And as the family matriarch, her influence was very heartfelt. And I was undergrad in a business program at the University of Michigan and thought about the admonition of my grandmother and thought, well, I don't really want to redo B school. I've just finished that. Why don't I try law school? And so I thought it would be a great way to build off of the business foundation that I had been developing and add a whole range of new skills.
When you first started out, did you start with Skadden? Was that the first job out?
Yeah. Brian, because you invoked Lori very kindly and as my legitimately better half, I can say that she always kids me. It's the only job I've ever had. And that's a stretch because I had a lot of jobs growing up through high school and the like, but professionally, I was a summer associate at Skadden and then went from that to a third year working as a third year law student working for Skadden in a nearby office, and then started my career 35 years ago at Skadden.
So I want to do all right, that was 35 years ago. Did you go into this and say, I want to go into M&A. I'm going to make a name for myself, and one day I'm going to be the CEO? Or was it a lot more varied and organic than that?
Way more varied than that. I came to Skadden, just to go back, I had really enjoyed business school, undergraduate, and thought I'd go to Skadden for a couple of years. It's a very business-oriented law firm. I thought it'd be a great platform for me for a couple of years and then get back onto the business side, which ended up taking about 20 years because I really got onto the business side of life when I took on this role 15 years ago. And we could come back around to that. And so, no, Brian, I didn't start at Skadden and think, here's my path. I'm a big believer, capture opportunities, create opportunities by committing yourself to what you're doing. Good things will happen. The proverbial doors will open for you down the road. And so my 2-year plan, 35 years later, was incredibly naive. And the reality was I came to learn. I did a rotation at Skadden. You can try out a couple of different practice areas as a newer lawyer, tried out a couple of areas, one of which was M&A, loved the quarterback element of really driving the deal forward and quarterbacking the team to pull all of the complex multidisciplinary pieces of that puzzle together, and was very happy in my life as an M&A lawyer and ultimately a partner in the Skadden M&A practice.
What was that process like for, like, you get elevated to the level 15 years ago? What did that look like? Like, was that something you were expecting? Is that a process on, you have this role and that's the heir apparent to this role? What was that entire journey like? Was it a call that you expected to get, say, hey, you're now going to be the leader of this firm?
It wasn't really any of those things, but I can describe it. And having just watched a committee of my partners go through a similar process this time, I would say it was a bit different 15 years ago. And I was encouraged to be interested, but at that time, we didn't have to step forward and say, I'd like to gun for this opportunity. And the prior managing partner saw something in me and invested in me in some leadership opportunities at a relatively young age, early stage of my career. And I hadn't realized, but those helped position me to be in the dialogue. And there were a group of partners that were in the dialogue. And ultimately, there was a formal process that I was asked to submit information to participate about the firm, my vision for the firm, and the like. And at some point, Jesse, I remember vividly, because it's one of these profound career moments. I remember getting the call that's finished a round of interviews for the final candidates back in the day and said, we are unanimously going to recommend to the board that you take on the role of executive partner for the firm. And I was floored, shocked, even though I was in the process. It wasn't a very politicized process. It wasn't where people were gathering up support and votes. I was articulating what I thought I could do to build on the strengths, because by then we were already 60 years into it, and with an incredible foundation to build on. And that's how I found myself in the role at a very young age.
I wanted to ask a quick question about that, which was, in retrospect, after having just gone through this process, what do you think made you stand out above all the other people being considered?
I think for the group that was in the final consideration back in my day, I probably offered the starkest contrast to the status quo, not in an upending disruption notion, but take someone who's in their young 40s, who has been on some of our important management committees, who has ideas to change the way we were doing a variety of things, recognizing that the legal profession was changing, the environment generally. I was elected in May of 2008, and just to put it into a geopolitical economic context, that was really in the heart of the economic crisis, and it was after Bear Stearns had been merged into JPM in a salvation transaction, and before Citi and AIG were nationalized and Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. And so the world was changing rapidly. And I think that afforded me the opportunity to articulate some ideas of how do we navigate through this and continue our pathway for success.
What percent of the vision that you had when you filled out that form for the board originally, 15 years later, you didn't see a pandemic coming. You probably didn't see the fight for talent at the same level it is today. You didn't see remote work. You didn't see all this coming. What percentage of it stayed the same? And what were the biggest things that were totally different than anything you could have anticipated?
It's both, Jess. You have, from a practice, I think we were on the cusp of a transition with the global financial crisis really upon us. And the nature of flows of work were changing. The kind of work was changing in a deeply distressed economic environment. That happened, and that was already underway, and it happened pretty powerfully during the intervening first few years. Could not have really anticipated the first global pandemic in 100 years, and the profound challenge that both remote work and severe health consequences from the pandemic caused, and that caused to the Skadden family, but it also happened across the globe. And so while we weren't immune from it, we certainly had not anticipated what working remote by and large for the better part of 2 years would do to the firm and our culture and our connective tissue. We're a firm that really prides itself on a hyper-connected, very collegial culture. And that was deeply challenged by the pandemic and the change in the way we work, which is still very different than it was before the pandemic. And the current economic climate is again very unsettled. Geopolitical dynamics are roiling, to say the least. And so the one thing I know now that I didn't know 15 years ago is you'll never be able to anticipate what will come your way. And so you have to rely on good judgment, a good team for advice, and put one foot in front of the other and make decisions to keep going.
Did your decision making have to change? Like, I know this is something we talked about when I was originally telling you about, hey, I think you should come on the podcast and share some of your thoughts on this. But when you go from even leading a group and being an M&A guy, and you're locked into your group and your clients on that end, to you're responsible for a multinational, multi-billion-dollar franchise and firm where you're the face fit and people look to you for guidance. And there's tough stuff like COVID. Like, I don't know what the right answer on this remote work thing is. I know you guys had a shift on what you guys are asking your lawyers to come in and do. What was the decision-making process that was behind that? And what's your thoughts in a firm, like you said, that's based off of mentorship and being with people and connecting? How has that played out? What's the response been, and what's that been navigating? Probably one of the more unique work shifts of the last century.
For sure. We've been very flexible in our approach, and we have changed tacks over time. At the beginning, it was, of course, health and safety first. Everyone work remote, stay remote. When we could, we reopened the office, but urged people to do what they were most comfortable with, had a staff, made it viable to come into the office, but didn't mandate, while there was still so much concern around health risk. And slowly, as the business world reemerged, we've reemerged, and we've been changing over time our approach to find a new equilibrium. I don't think the new normal, whenever we get there, will be the pre-pandemic old normal. But I do think that while we're able to foster a lot of collaboration and deliver extraordinary client results while working remote, we're also feeling the impact of that in training and developing that next generation, and all of the nuance that happens away from the formal meeting or Zoom or WebEx and what have you, that doesn't happen if we're not together routinely. And so we're at a place where we are balancing a heavy dose of in-person connectivity, which we think will single us out not only for client development and accelerated growth, but also enable us to deliver better outcomes for our clients more efficiently. And so, while also, though, recognizing that flexibility is important for so many people, and we are trying to respect that professionalism and the need for flexibility. So, Jesse, we're trying to find a balance that works for Skadden. Back in the beginning, we were feeling our way in the dark, if that expression resonates, and talking with colleagues at other professional service firms to figure out what would be the right pathway forward in a situation where the modern, literally, business community had never experienced something like that.
How are you developing future leaders in a virtual world?
Frankly, it starts with hiring the best and the brightest and having them want to meet us halfway and be hyper engaged in their own career development. Brian, I'm always struck by when the media portrays almost an adversarial nature to the employer-employee relationship, where we're totally aligned. The more that we can develop our talent, it's better for our firm. It is certainly better for our clients, and it's definitely better for the talent. And so some of it is remote or in person. It happens through the work, and we've got really cutting edge work that challenges your brain and requires you to collaborate with people to deliver the right outcome. And then some of it is this informal work experiences that are outside the project task, but that you develop your own mosaic of what you want to be as a lawyer. In my ecosystem, what you want to be as a lawyer is a mosaic of the people you work with and frequently admire, and try to take the best of their trait, style, and what would be authentic for you. Not everyone's style resonates with everyone else. And so all of that is integral to developing into the best, really, impact maker for a client advisor. And so we believe it can't only happen remote. It's not merely draft something, send me an email with the product, and I'll send you another assignment. It's an iterative apprenticeship model that in part is predicated on relationship building. You build a strong rapport, creating formal and informal mentors that help guide you through your career. That doesn't happen naturally through a Zoom screen.
Yeah, and it comes back to the thing of, if you're in a Zoom meeting with somebody from 12:30 to 1:30, and then your next meeting is 1:30 to 2:30, you're just bouncing between different links all day. There's no the walk. Like, I at least know from prior experience, like in internships and being in work settings, you learn about people's kids, their families, their activities from the gaps between breaks. And even though it doesn't directly correlate to the work setting, I think it makes you a better partner, a better friend, a better client perspective. Like, what is the takeaway that you guys have seen from the people that you guys are bringing through the ranks and are moving at a faster pace than their peers? Are they just like, it's that balance that I think you guys are striking on? Is there a work-life balance? What's been your experience being there for 35 years, going through how did you maintain it? Did you find value in leaning into the work stuff, adding the family dynamic to that? What's that entire process in the firm? How do you guys sort through that?
There's a lot packed in there, Jesse. I think the notion of work-life balance has to be measured over reasonable periods of time rather than day to day, hour by hour, week by week. Because if you're cranking on a project at work, or you're immersed in a situation happening at home with your family, that's your priority for that period of time. And so you have to take the lens up a bit and look over a reasonable period of time and find the right balance, because it is incredibly important to have a vibrant professional community as well as a vibrant personal, whether that's family or other friends, series of relationships. I've been telling attorneys really for the past few years that while we're producing a high velocity of client work, what's not happening is all the fun, that relationship building, getting to really know each other and having those informal interactions. That's the fun part of the job, and that suffered. And that's by dint of a global pandemic, it needed to suffer. We needed to all step back and stay safe. And now I think it's an opportunity where people can really lean back in and pick up. I don't think it's opportunity lost. It's just it had to happen at a moment in time, and now's the opportunity to come back and build those relationships. Those relationships are durable. They go beyond a particular project or a particular client relationship. I can now speak from having been a summer associate. My relationship with my co-summer associates, I just celebrated one of their daughter's weddings 2 weeks ago. And this is from 35 years ago as summer associates starting out, all the way to deep client relationships that morph over time into authentic friendships.
It's kind of like it's the journey, it's not the destination. And getting people to buy into the fact that, like, you were just zipping past it and you're futuring your entire thing instead of recognizing that you're living life one day at a time. And these are people that make it meaningful. And if you subtract that and it's only about the work, there may be a sense of emptiness.
Certainly for a firm. Now, if you think about it in the context of we are so deeply investing in everyone's training and development, and for us, building that connective tissue that enables people to accelerate the training and development, create the cultural glue that ensures that the values of our firm thrive and live on. That requires more than task-based projects.
I just wanted to pivot 1 second, just because I'm looking at time and I want to make sure there's so much I want to cover with Eric. But one of the big ones is, I believe like one of the places you made a name for yourself was in M&A, and that you were involved in some of the biggest deals in recent history. What is your insight on the art of a deal and making a deal come off from the perspective of the seller, the acquirer or buyer, and all the CPAs, the attorneys, the bankers. What's your biggest insight from doing some massive deals on what works and what doesn't?
Key takeaway is, what's your client's objective? Too many people overlay their own personal agenda into, oh, I'm going to deliver X, Y, or Z. And one of our firm founders always used to tell a story about how the CEO of a client came back to the board and said, we've got a handshake on a deal at X dollars per share. And one of our founders said, give me 2 hours, and came back and got a modestly better financial price and lost the client. And so really what was learned a lesson that he imparted to me and others of is not a cult of personality. It's what's your client's objective? How do you navigate a sea of professionals? Brian, you articulated, you've got accountants, bankers, lots of internal resources at clients devoted to it. How do you deliver their objective in a efficient, time sensitive way? And that's picking your spots. And not every point is a do or die, make or break point. You need to know what the client really needs out of the deal for it to be successful, and what's nice to have, but otherwise can get left on the cutting room floor, proverbial cutting room floor, if in fact you need to do that to get to the deal. And so it's not a formula to follow. It's a lot of EQ in the art of the deal. Is how does the deal come together? What are the countervailing forces? And what are really the client's priorities?
In M&A, are you like more junior lawyers or people just starting their careers? Is there any common mistakes, misconceptions, things that you think they're walking into the room thinking they should be indexing for and they're off on, and they should be paying more attention to as they start their career? They're just getting out of law school, first 5 years to start. Where should they be putting their attention on?
It's funny, you said some buzzwords in there. My phrase is details matter. And so you're coming in, you're incredibly smart, well-trained by law school, but not yet deeply steeped in the art of the deal. And so pay attention to the details, read the room, make yourself indispensable, because there's always the next task that needs to happen, the next piece of the project. And be proactive and say, hey, I see we're going to turn the corner and probably need these next 3 things. Tell me, when can I get started on doing that? So being proactive, paying attention to the details, can-do attitude. Attitude is undervalued in the what makes great lawyers. There's legal acumen and sheer candle power certainly are incredible assets. Attitude matters. And so people who bring the A game of how can I be helpful will learn so much, because that's infectious and people will undoubtedly lean on them more and more.
And in an industry like law, where it's a service-based client-facing industry, where your asset is your guys' talent and your lawyers, and it's only gotten a more competitive space with harder to get great talent, and the gap for people trying to get into roles is harder. How do you position that as a firm? Like, is there core ethos and values of lawyers that you're trying to position and sell to your clients? What's the strategy on retaining, developing, and then acquiring the best talent in the legal space?
And Jesse, that's exactly how we think about it. It's sort of, you start, attract, develop, retain, promote, and it is all about the talent, right? At the end of the day, We've got a great brand, 75 years. We're celebrating our 75th anniversary as a firm this year. So we've got this strong foundation. It's up to all of us to drive it forward. And so what do? You're hiring great people. We have formal training programs. We have the work, and that's really, call it the informal but significant training opportunities, the mentorship. We certainly go to market on the recruiting side by selling to new attorneys the ability to join a firm that is an incredible place to work. First and foremost, we care about our people. It's an incredibly inclusive environment, hyper professional, and we're doing cutting edge work across so many practices and so many geographies that it lets our people develop their own interest in different practices and potentially geographies over their early years of their career. So you don't come in locked and loaded and with any preset, preordained vision of this is what I will do with my career. You have to come in with that curiosity to say, I want to learn what I want to do with my career. And so we go to market with such a strong brand and foundation of clients, and then put the training and effort into enabling people to be their best version of themselves.
What do you think the importance of an Ivy League or name brand education is in today's marketplace?
Those schools are wonderful, and we hire a significant number of graduates out of, we'll call it the top law schools. It's broader than the Ivy League, and there's that itself is under severe adjustment in the current environment because some of the rankings have shifted as recently as this year, quite profoundly. But for Skadden, we're hiring out of 40 different law schools. And I'll tell you, we are hiring some of our best attorneys and our strongest long-term contributors from law schools that aren't in the more traditional elite law schools, but they are incredibly talented, hyper-driven, super smart. Circumstances affect where people go to law school, and that could be financial circumstances, geographic and family circumstances, and the like. And so we have been convinced that recruiting across a much broader spectrum of law schools creates a hyper diverse and excellent newer attorney population.
How would I get your attention if I was not at an Ivy and I was that potential diamond in the rough that you're referring to at any of these other schools? How exactly am I getting on your radar?
It starts with, what are you doing at that school? Not a top. It's broader than the Ivies, but not a top law school. What are you doing there? How are you doing there? What are you doing vis-a-vis leadership at that school? There are a number of ways that these aren't secrets. Unfortunately, there are a number of ways that people can make an impact in their ecosystem and get on our radar through traditional recruiting outreach, through networking, to get at least eyes on their application, and by making an impact in their schools where their career placement team will reach us, say, we have a special student we'd really like you to give a serious look about. It's about the person and qualities take on a myriad of different meanings rather than pedigree and law degree.
Being from the other side of this now that you're the one like leading the organization on your way out, you guys are selecting a new leader starting in April. What excited you about Jeremy? What was that process like from your guys' end? Now overseeing it, what made him the guy in your head that you were like, I think the partnership really supported him the same way that you were supported when you went through it yourself 15 years ago?
You ended with the answer, which is the partnership. We created a committee of 10 partners, and they interviewed all of our partners, and they had submissions from almost all of our partners about attributes they would like to see in the next managing partner, strategic questions that they would like to understand. And so by the end of that process, that committee that recommended Jeremy take the reins felt that he not only had all of those traits and the strategic vision, but that the partnership would quickly align around him and help him be a great success, because it really takes a village, and his success will be because our partnership will put its effort into building successful practices, delivering amazing outcomes for clients, and continuing to be a supportive culture of our leader, but of each other. And I think that all comes from this process that included so much input across our partnership.
One place that I wanted to go before we wrap this up, because I know we're coming up on time, is looking back on the entire journey there. You've been at Skadden for 35 years. It's one of the world's largest law firms by revenue and just by prestige and name. How does it feel to be on sort of the back chapter of that and prep for the next phase? Like, what is that experience like after being at one company and your identity being there for so long? Are you excited about seeing what else you're interested in outside of this law career? Where's sort of your head at?
First and foremost, I've been incredibly fortunate to be able to spend my 35 years at Skadden, at a firm that I'm incredibly passionate about and incredibly proud. It is a big part of my professional identity, which is a big part of my overall identity. It's not so easy to slice where does that end and personal identity begin. And it's been extraordinary. I'm super excited both to transition with Jeremy over the course of the intervening months. That for me is going to be a lot of fun. And I'm also very excited. I feel great about where Skadden is. It's a perfect time for a transition. We're doing it at a point in time where we're making a change at a time of strength. And while the geopolitical environment is upside down and the economic environment is confused at best, we are really well positioned for the future. And I'm super excited about supporting Jeremy in steeping him in the knowledge that I've gathered over the course of 15 years and watching him put his imprint on our future. It's very, very exciting for me.
What's the number one thing? You know how like when one president takes the office from another president and they give him like that little letter and they say, read this, you know, when you take office, what are you saying to Jeremy?
It's all about the people. That is our go-to-market. That is our brand. That's what secures us, cutting edge work. That's what delivers amazing, innovative client work for our clients. And that is the lawyers. It is the professional staff. And we need to continue to cultivate the best and the brightest while we're finding ways to build that cultural glue. And I've already had that discussion with Jeremy.
I'd love to do a chapter 2 of this, maybe in a couple months or a year, and we'll do your second podcast ever, and hear about what the transition period was like, what that experience is like, and then what you're doing at that point. So Eric, deeply appreciate you taking the time with us. I know it's probably been a chaotic couple of weeks at Skadden, and this has been a blast.
Thank you. Thanks, Jesse and Brian. delighted to do it. Really excited about what you guys are doing with this podcast, and look forward to chapter 2.